experience other coaches as they continue to progress who maybe didn't take those extra steps. Like that was a really like big commitment of her to bring us to those games. Like that's a big ordeal to like organize that, but the impact that it had, I think, on all of us, like me and my teammates, we were like 12 years old or 11, and I can still vividly remember it, and we still talk about it.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode, I was delighted and very honoured to welcome professional footballer Christie Gray. It was great to speak to Christie, and there was so much that I took away from both a personal element and a player element in this conversation with her. As we were having this discussion, I was making so many notes throughout because there was so much that I wanted to extract from her, so many great things that she said, and it was just, even though I could watch back, I just really wanted to capture it in the moment. This was a great episode because I was able to talk to Christie about what she does as a footballer, as well as finding out more about her personality and what she wants to do in the world, and certainly help the game evolve and grow. And it's fantastic to see someone on their own journey and trying to follow this dream and this path, which is not an easy path to be on, and to really follow through with your dreams and goals. But someone who's on it but really wants to give back to so many in the process as well. You're not always going to find that because sport can be a very individualised pathway as such. Even though we talk about teams and having this connection, these relationships, everyone's out there aspiring for their own goals and dreams, and when we live our one life and we're only here for a certain amount of time, we try to achieve our own goals, our own aspirations. So sometimes we can become individuals towards that and take away from being a team, and we have to really aspire to achieve our dreams, goals and objectives, and then really prioritise. And sometimes we can make mistakes along the way by cutting the wrong people out, making the wrong decisions, and it goes against us sometimes, and it can break down those key relationships that we have. But when it comes back down to those aspirations, we really focus on them and we give it our all. And when we're on that process and that journey, not everyone wants to give back to someone. So it was incredible that Christie really wants to give back whilst out on her own journey, whilst as a young person, and thinking almost 10 years ahead already. And it's a great way to think because it sets her up for the next 10 years, it sets her up for here and now, gives her so many experiences alongside playing. But then it's also kind of sad in a way that she's having to pre-plan for when her career ends, because the female game isn't so sustainable at the minute. And even though it's growing, it needs to grow at a more rapid pace to maintain players like Christie in the game and give them the opportunities that they're very deserving of. She's a great advocate, a great ambassador, and I'm so supportive of her, and I wish her the best of luck on her playing career and hope it continues to aspire. But as we continue to have a conversation, we spoke about ego, jobs, that there's no pro league in Canada, so players end up giving up. She's had quite a big setback in terms of injury, and she's had to really overcome this and come back into training and realign her mindset, her focus, go through rehabilitation, set herself back up, find that motivation to play. And when you're out injured and you're abroad and you're already giving up so much for your career, and something big like that happens, it can really give a lot of worry, especially on the short-term contracts that a lot of female players are finding right now in the game. But she's really overcome that. She's worked hard, she's aspiring to continue with her career, and she talked about survival and this uniqueness. She then talked about change of coaches, locker room changes. We then covered being lives, mums, the juggle, long-term planning, considerations to have upon a playing career, perspective of looking at some of the older players within the age group, so when they're starting families and how that may affect, and something to be considerate of while she's young, while she's seeing that in and around her and towards her plans. One great quote that she had was, "There's many sticks in the fire." Now, I'm not going to delve into that too much. I'm going to allow you to watch the episode and find out more about it. But then we can become overconsumed in this life circle, this football mindset and output, surrounded by everything that's going on, and it can be really difficult to sort of maintain. And we've covered a bit of it where she has had an injury, where she's moved abroad, short-term contracts, away from family, going into locker rooms, changes of personnel, changes of coaches, and all this can affect the optimal performance of a player, and as well as the person that is in this journey themselves, like Christie. So there's so much to even consider and so much to support. Even though we go and watch a game of football for 90 minutes, there's so much going around in the background that we must be considerate of and really support our players, because a lot of fans are quite easy and quick to jump into criticisms and ready to put messages out on social media criticising the player and putting them down, etc. But there is so much going on in their lives, and even though they have played 90 minutes of football, they have given up so much to get there, especially in the female game. So fans must really be more considerate of this. We talked about aspirations, translations, experiences, amplifying programs to create more opportunities for younger players in the future of the game. We talked about giving back. That be happy on my own. There's a great quote there again to really watch and get through. She's mindful of the ability to impact people, which I was really proud of hearing that, and it's lovely to say because she belongs to play well. She has responsibility towards and of her fellow players, and there is just so much I could continue to delve in within this fantastic episode, and there is so much going on, but I really want you to watch it. I want you to enjoy it. It was a fascinating interview and I really enjoyed talking to Christie. I hope she's doing well, but if you could drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, as well as a comment, that'd be fantastic. You can drop all of them on a YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, LinkedIn and Twitter. It is TRC Podcast _ on Twitter and the Reflective Coach Podcast everywhere else. Other than that, this is Coach Luca. I hope you look forward to the amazing episodes I've already got coming this year. It's been fantastic to start 2023 this way, and this is a great episode to start with. Thank you very much. Enjoy the episode, take a lot away from it, make some notes like I did. This is Coach Luca. Morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, there's no problems.
Cool.
So how's your day been so far? Because you're a little bit ahead of me, so it's, literally still morning where I am.
Yeah, no, it's been a slow start today. We have a day off. We have our last game of the year tomorrow, so had practice last night and just slept in this morning and just getting up and ready to go for this.
Are you looking forward to your last game tomorrow then, or?
Yeah, it's been a long season, and I can't believe it's almost over. I've been here since early March, so it's been a long but really exciting journey and a great first, I guess, pro contract away from home. Learned a lot, and yeah, I'm excited, I guess, to finish it off, hopefully with a good performance tomorrow.
Well, let's hope that you have a great performance tomorrow. I'm sure that you will. But, a breather is actually nice to restart and refresh. And, especially in your situation in that sense where you've gone abroad and then you've had to get straight into it and then in an entire new season and then routine for your life as well. So that all comes together all as one. And, for you, it's probably a much needed breather.
Yeah, I think off season will be a nice chance to see some family, and I haven't seen my younger brother in almost a year, so since last Christmas. So I think it'll be a great chance to reset, reconnect with friends and family. COVID before that, friends who you haven't seen before COVID, it's been 2 or even 3 years for some people, which is crazy. So I'm excited to be home in Canada and just get to reconnect with those people, and obviously then get back to training after taking just a short break to let the body sort of recover after a long season, and then get going again and prepare for next year.
And I'm sure they're all looking forward to seeing you, and it's great that you can actually start then a full season where you're then sort of in more of a routine and in a position to, have that fresh start. But in that sense, people don't see how difficult it is where on the back of COVID has still, played a part in its process, moving abroad, then going independent, living on your own, then earning your own wages, etc., living in a different culture, being abroad, new team. There's so much more in it when you start layering it. It's quite difficult as well, especially for, such a young person who's been used to living with family and then, bump, you're on your own now. It can be quite hard to adapt to.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, when COVID first hit in 2020, I was actually living in France at the time. So I was studying in Bordeaux, France, and had the chance to play or train with the team while I was there. But I was evacuated in March 2020, and had to fly home to Canada. So that was sort of the first start of COVID, was when I was abroad. So that was interesting. It went from like such a free life that everyone sort of envisions overseas in Europe, and then it just came to a quick halt. And then, yeah, I guess since living in France, the first time going abroad was just this past December when I went to Spain for a trial, and then obviously moving to Sweden and being here now. But it's been nice to be able to travel again, because it was sort of a taste. I was only there for 3 months, I guess, because I had to leave because of COVID, or 4 months. But I mean, yeah, COVID's definitely caused some complications for everyone. I mean, obviously the frontline workers specifically, but it's been nice to just ease back into normalcy. And I mean, until the day I came to Sweden, I was training in a mask, and then I came here, and COVID seems to have evaporated. Well, no, it hasn't evaporated. It's still here, but their policies and stuff are a lot different and more lenient. Um, so that was a different adjustment, because coming from a college environment, I think anyone who's playing U Sports or NCAA in the US would have been used to some really strict regulations. Like for me to go to a team workout, you would have to check into like 2 or 3 different apps, and then show different, like wear a mask and do all these protocols every single day. And then at nationals, get tested every single day. It was a lot. And it sort of made you question if it was worth it, you know? Obviously it was, but it's just nice to be back to some normalcy where we don't have to focus on all that too much anymore.
Of course, and that's such a difficult, stage, in a process within itself. And already asking that question, is it worth it? It's quite a tough question to ask, and sort of it's always in your mind, and it's always going to be relaying in a way, because that's the same for professional coaches. I was having a conversation last night with a coach, and we were even saying the same for ourselves. But even for professional footballers like yourself, where you've had to go abroad, you've had to endure that journey already. You're not at a stage where you've been given a 5-year contract, you're on £1 million a week, and you're like, this is great. It's looking for the next 5-10 years, and then you have to question that at times, because it's not easy. And as you say, you've come out of Canada, you've gone to Spain on a trial, you've gone to France, now you're in Sweden. So already, at a young age, you've been around 4 different countries. So in the next 5, could it be 20 countries? Could it be 20 clubs? And that's what's difficult. And even in that sense, on the basis of COVID, when that kicked in, obviously clubs, did they focus on female football as such? Probably not, because they knew that they had to make cuts somewhere, and cutting the female team, from previous discussions with other pros, that was probably the easiest thing to do. Or they've retracted the money because overseas players and all that, and it was easier to save their costs. And that was quite difficult in a sense, because you could have been in a position where you were like, oh great, this is working out, and then suddenly the club have gone, well, do you know what, we're not going to spend that money on you now, we're going to just go for a domestic player and get through this season. And it's been tough, but it's mad that you use the word evacuating, and it's something you associate with a war, isn't it? And then, oh, you've been evacuated because of COVID.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I remember going through waves of panic, because at first, of course, no one really knew what COVID was at the beginning. So I remember everything was kind of going on at normal. I was hearing things at home, but nothing had hit France yet. And then my roommate, he was actually from Singapore, so he had to evacuate because they were closing the borders of the country. So he had to leave, and I was like, okay, I think this is getting pretty serious. And my parents were like, you have to book your flight home. And then it got to the point where our coach, one day at the training facility there, he put up hand sanitizers machines, because I thought that would save the world. And then the next day, the French Football Federation canceled all trainings, games, the whole leagues, and we're like, okay, this is probably pretty serious. And then my school, which I was there for, studying online, they switched everything to online, and went home to Canada, and then did a month and a half of school on France time in Canada. So that was interesting.
Again, another balance.
But yeah, it's crazy times.
Another balance in itself is getting that education in as well, which obviously is so important. But then fitting that in and around everything, and for many people, because they don't understand the way of the football world, as everything that's not seen behind the scenes. So they might go and watch you on a Saturday, they really enjoy your performance, but they don't see your life behind it, and they just think it's week to week to week. But it can be so difficult, such as moving abroad, living on your own, having to get in a routine, adapting to that culture. And do you find it difficult then being away from family at first, or is it something that you still struggle with, or?
Yeah, I think I've done a lot better with it now. The first time moving away, like when I was studying abroad in France, that was the first time I'd been to Europe in my life. So that was really far from my friends and family, and it was difficult, but I had a roommate, so that was helpful. I do have a roommate now too. So it was just a really short time period, like 10 days, but since living here for 8 months, it was tough. It was tough at first, but my roommate was from the US. We were the same age, so had similar interests and actually are really close friends. The things ended up changing the summer transfer window, and I have a new roommate now. But she's also American, so it's nice to have that sort of English foundation and a lot of similarities just coming from college soccer environments. And obviously, moving to Sweden, it's both of our first contracts. But I think when it gets tough being away from friends and family is so I actually, the last game before, we had like a FIFA break for the Euros in the summer. Um, and I actually tore my MCL and my PCL just partially, so I didn't need surgery, but it was still like a full 3 and a bit month rehab. So I think for me, that was like really tough because my friend had just left in the transfer window also, and my roommate, and then I got injured. And our whole head coach is actually, the whole coaching staff turned over. So it was a lot of new changes, and being far from home, I felt like there wasn't really a constant in my life because everything was changing, and doing rehab and that type of thing. It's different in different countries, right? So maybe things that I would have been used to at home, it's just a little bit different here. But yeah, I can't really say like more than enough that how helpful everyone was with my recovery, and the help at the hospital and stuff was great. But it was still tough, I think, mentally because I couldn't play for, yeah, 3 and a bit full months. And it's like all those sessions, like if your main focus, for me, my main purpose in Sweden is to play soccer, when that's taken away from you for a couple months, it's like you kind of come back to what am I doing here? Or like, yeah, I got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other to get back because you feel a bit lost without that purpose, right? Like at school, if you're injured, you have to still focus on school or get that job done if you're working part time. But here, like my main focus this season was just to play. So when that's taken away, that was pretty tough being far from family. But you make it work and you build your own little families here, which I have, and I'm super grateful for like all my teammates and everything here.
And I'm glad that you feel that way, and I'm glad that you got someone that you can connect with that similar background and that similar journey, and someone that you can relate to, which is really helpful because going abroad isn't easy. Because even trying to connect with new teammates who speak a different language and obviously the culture is very different, it can be quite hard to go into that change room and introduce yourself as, "Oh, hey, I'm Christy. I'm from Canada. I'm part of your team now." Because some of the other pros that I've spoken to, they say when they've gone into a change room themselves, they've been seen as the outcast in a way because they're the foreign player as such who's gone into their changing room, and those players from that country don't always like it in those situations.
Yeah, I think it's definitely tough. It comes with a level of pressure because some of these smaller clubs who bring in like international players, it's not necessarily normal to have a ton of them. So when they come, it's definitely tough being, I guess, the new player in the change room at first when like the language, obviously. I mean, I can understand a little bit of Swedish now, but I definitely could not for a very long time. So, but the good thing is everyone can speak English here. So that's a difference from, I guess, an environment like France or Spain, where there was like very few English speakers unless they were international players themselves. But I think in any environment, like I have friends playing in Italy and other countries, and language barrier is kind of one of the one things that's not spoken about that actually can really affect your experience. So I'm really grateful that the girls can speak English so that I'm at least to have able to have conversations with them, even if like the primary like language of conversation is not in one that I really understand. You can kind of be connected through like music and other ways, like we in TikTok and social media stuff, which is cool. But I think the language barrier was probably tough. And I guess like I was saying with like the friends in other countries too feel similar pressures, like being that international player, because we know like how expensive I guess you are to, and you have like moms, girls working jobs, and you don't necessarily like deserve what you're getting more than any other player on the team, but it's just the way it is in order for you to get there and to play. So I think just like balancing that and just being mindful and respectful and just taking your job seriously is kind of all you can do to try and fit in.
And there's a lot there which you just said about, and as you're speaking, I'm literally making other notes of things that you say. Even though I've got a structure of questions and stuff, it's just you start having a conversation. You want to pick up on other things which you say, which is great. And it's great that you can have those connections through listening to music and stuff. And I think that at times females can do it a lot better than males because could you see a group of males sitting in a corner listening to a bit of music together? I'm sure the Roy Keane of that changing room would look at them and be like, "What are you doing?" But I think it's great that females have that interconnection and the way that they can just change the environment. Of course, you're going to have females who have that sort of ego and they don't want to be part of that, and they're like, "We're here to work," and you can see that. But then they don't want to be part of that social group. But it's nice that a core social group is there and that it can make you feel involved, because there's nothing worse than being isolated in a country where you haven't got your family, where you don't speak their language. It's already been difficult. You've been hit by injury, and an array of things around it, but it's even better when you can fit into that changing room and you can have that support, especially when you went through your injury, where they were able to speak English and make you feel part of it, where it wasn't such a difficult time. Well, it wasn't as difficult as it could have been, and you were in a situation where you had that support network around you, because as you say, that mental side of being hit by your injury on top of everything else already listed, for you it must be at a time be like, oh, what, again, another problem or another barrier, because football is literally, all right, or you might have another transfer, or your contract has changed, or your wages, or you have to move, or your teammate changes, or someone's sold, etc. So it's constant hurdles in football that people don't see, and it's constant. And for us as coaches and footballers, to consistently have that resilience and to be, taking each barrier as it comes continuously, by the time a career ends, you could have had like 2,000 barriers which you faced, and it's incredible because how many people have that barriers over a career span, and for a footballer, I think that shows so much resilience.
Yeah, I think some of those barriers you mentioned are definitely very real in there. So, like, just for perspective, we've had three different head coaches. We're on to the fourth now, like, in terms of turnover of coaching staff. It's been crazy. Like, I came from, I guess, a college where I know college environments are definitely different than professional, where it's like you have one coach your whole life for 5 years and then come here for 8 months and have four different coaching staffs in the time. And then injuries. And then as a transfer player, you have players going to different clubs, going to different countries, and then a couple new players coming in. So it's, I guess, so much more of a dynamic space. And obviously, like, we're towards the bottom of the second division fighting. We were fighting to not get relegated. We have been relegated, which is too bad, but we were like the lowest team coming in. So it's just been kind of a grind all year just to survive in this established league. But it's been a unique experience, I think, dealing with all those dynamic changes of coaching staff, injuries, new players, and then obviously reintegrating people into the locker room because it's been constant every time. Yeah, it's been nice to have a couple of new Americans come in, so at least they speak English and you can kind of be that safe spot, I guess, for them. But it's been a crazy season, but yeah, full of obstacles. All those things you said are very real and aren't necessarily shown on social media when you're following teams week to week. But yeah, it can be intense sometimes, but it can also be a lot of fun. So that's what you're living the dream, I guess. Trying.
And I love that. I love that you're trying to live that dream and you're giving everything towards it, and that you are trying to have fun, because football can be so intense and it's such a results driven business that even though the game is actually built on the basis of fun, and that's where it came from. Literally kids playing on the street getting a ball, and then everything evolved from there. We there's so much focused around it in terms of those results. It can be really difficult when you're in your journey to have so much fun, and when you hear players coming towards the end of their career and they're like, "Do you know what? I'm completely done with football." You can understand in that contrast, especially when so many obstacles have been faced and they finally reached that point where they've gone, "That's it, I've had enough now."
Yeah, I think the level of sacrifice, of course, depending on club and level two, just continues to escalate, especially with those who have like national team commitments as well, like in the levels higher. It can hit a point where I think like those sacrifices we talk about, like, is it worth it anymore? So I know people with injuries and shuffling around kind of hit that point later in life, and often females sooner than men, just simply because most females can't afford to live off of their careers. And I mean, for me in Canada, there's not even a professional league, so I can't go home and play. So I know I have another friend, she's older in her 20s, she's Canadian. been in with the national team, and I know we were talking about this before she left in the transfer window to go to France. And it's just like, even if we want to go home and play, we can't because there's no professional league there. Whereas here, I mean, there's 2 girls on our team who are moms and have taken time to like give birth and start their families, but they can still continue playing. And that's not an option that we currently have. I hope it's changing, but we are years and years behind, I think, most European countries. So I think it's been cool to see and be in an environment where women's soccer is valued so much. I mean, this league has been in existence, like Elitettan and Allsvenskan, the top 2 leagues in Sweden, I think for close to 30 years, which just shows me that we are at least 30 years behind where we are now in Canada. So I hope that'll change, especially with the gold medal this past summer. So hopefully that can change, but just enjoying it, I guess, while we can abroad.
I hope so. And again, there's so many points in there when you speak about lives, mums, juggling, making that decision. And you know, I've made a note of that, and that will come up another point because that seems to be quite a consistent message. But the one key thing there is that there's no pro league in Canada. And when I've been speaking to a lot of Americans, and I'm trying to follow it more on Twitter and understand what goes on in America a lot. And it's amazing how incredible the sports is over in America and Canada in terms of high school sports, college. There's amazing facilities, and it's so different to what we have here in the UK. And there seems to be so much more progression for players whilst they're on that journey and they're young, and they can combine that with studies. And then you see, Player of the Year showcasing, and there's a lot more to it. And it's like, what an incredible feature. But when it comes actually down to it, and the amount of girls, just taking the girls section, who go through it year in, year out, and then there's no pro league or there's no progression in America, then they have to go abroad. That can be quite difficult because it's sort of, you have this amazing education pathway, but there's nothing at the end of it here domestically for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, like starting my college career, I was like, damn, I can't believe these are the last 4 years I'm ever going to play soccer. And that my like guy friends who played on the men's team, there's chances for them to get drafted into Canadian professional leagues. There's a CPL, MLS2, MLS, and other leagues as well. And I'm like, how are there 3 options for men to play in Canada and there's 0 for us? And anyway, so then I started looking abroad, and I think what you said there is an important point. Like, you get your degree, you get your education, which I think is super important, and I'm glad I have my degree. I studied commerce for 4.5 years, and it was hard, but I'm glad I have that now and kind of have the freedom to explore. But I think what you said is super important about that next connecting pathway. So especially for the NWSL, which is a league in the US, in order to qualify to get drafted for that league, you have to play Division One. And of that Division One pool of incredibly talented players, only a very select few actually get drafted or signed to teams. So I think looking abroad, there's also, you look at, okay, how do you get there? And there's only a few agents, and a lot of those agents just want to focus maybe on like the higher cost players. And I think there's a really big gap between like maybe those players who aren't like the Alex Morgans of their class, who aren't like senior national team making caps, but still are good enough to play in like second division or maybe bottom tier first division teams. Like, there's no real agency for that. So I think like being involved with one of those when I'm retired or in future years is something that's of major interest for me, because I want to keep that like tunnel and like that ability to bring players over both from Canada and the US. Because I think just because the US has a league which is fantastic, I still think there's a ton of players that have potential to go professional, but simply stop their career because there's not that pathway. So I think it's all about visibility and pathway. And based on what I've seen here, every player who plays youth sports, which is like the NCAA collegiate stream in Canada, as well as like the NC Division 1 and 2, I think any player coming out of our system, although we like grow up with different academies and structures, which I think like the Europe does a better job of like running academies. They're just more focused, I think, whereas the US and Canada are more holistic, and they're focused on getting that scholarship or getting to that varsity team. It's interesting to compare structures, but I think overall it's been really cool to see how Europe structures work, and then kind of chat about like the similarities and differences. And me and my teammates have often talked about which structure do we think is better, because it's like a kid like me, Sid, and Alyssa, who are like my 2 current American roommates. Like, we've grown up playing in academies, but we've also played some other sports. and then eventually specialized in soccer. Whereas, at least what I've seen from when I was in France for a very short time, just like looking at the boys' academy, because we shared a space with them, it seemed like they would walk around with their laundry bags and sort of go through their days, and it just seemed like a lot. Like it's just football all the time. Like you're not necessarily playing other sports. So I guess if your dream is to just play football, that's amazing, but it can also be draining for anyone. Even if you love something, doing it 24/7 all the time with that pressure can be a lot. So we like to like compare, I guess, systems and be like, whose system is better. Um, I don't know. I think it's nice to get the degree and get it out of the way and be able to like play a varsity sport while you're getting that degree, which like I was fortunate enough to do. So I really enjoyed my experience, but I also think it's cool how here there's more of a focus on going pro and getting there. And then maybe at the same time you can study or work while you play. So it's just different, but it's cool to compare.
And I think it's great that you have those conversations and in your own head that you are comparing systems, because that can really help on your own journey in terms of deciding where you want to go next, and having those conversations with people who've been on their own journey or maybe been out there in those systems, and even just being around, as you say, mums in their lives where they might be 5-6 years older than you. They have to juggle whether a job, or they have to make that decision to have maternity leave, or whether to start a family, and all those other decisions, whether they come back to football, how they come back. And for you being a young footballer, that all helps in terms of when you get there at that point, or just in the back of your mind, because at some point for every female footballer they have to go, well, when do I want to start a family? And it's difficult then to balance between being a professional footballer and then life itself, because you might go 28, still in prime years. I might play till I'm 30, 31, 32, maybe a little bit beyond, or do you know what, I'd like to start a family at 28 before I get into my 30s. And it can be quite hard to balance and weigh that up at times, and it can be difficult, because even then when you say changing coaches, if there's a change of coach but you're on maternity and then you come back and that coach hasn't seen you play, the entire system in terms of the style of play, in terms of how they want their team to play, it can be difficult to try and reintegrate a part of that. And obviously the more mature players in your squad might have more experiences about that, but for you to see that as a young player must play in your mind that some contrast at the points that you're going to experience within your career at a later date.
Yeah, I think like with all like coaching staff turnovers, you have to sort of like reprove yourself again. Like nothing's guaranteed. And like you said, for those players who are maybe on maternity leave, taking time off, like we have a player right now in that situation who's coming back. It's like, I mean, we've had a couple of coaches since the last coach was there who knew who she was. So it's like you have to sort of not reinvent yourself, but like prove your worth and everything. And it's tough, and that's like something I think that's being talked about more these days, especially with like Crystal Dunn and seeing her recent comeback with the US national team in the Thorns. But it's tough, and I don't think it's something that'll get easier, but I think as more people talk about it and talk about those transitions. But I think in football, like anytime you get injured on the men's side or women's side, reintegrating and sort of reproving your worth and that you're ready to get back on the field is sort of always those battles with coaches and staff.
Yeah, of course. Especially the male game, if you're out injured or and all that, which is slightly different because they're not going to go on maternity leave. They might be on parental leave and have that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, but it's not as hard for them to be on maternity for 9 months compared to a
Mm-hmm.
female. And some people don't see that, and it can be quite difficult, especially when the female relies on that wage of what the pro club might be paying, and it's not always the greatest of wages. And then it's quite a difficult thing to come back from, and then they go, "Do you know what, I've got a child, I've got a family. Do I need to be travelling? Do I need to be training? Do I need to be up late? Do I need to reprove myself?" And they might go, "Do you know what, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm going to go into a job and I'm just going to focus on my family, knowing I've had a pro career." And in that sense, it was interesting that you are quite young and you're already speaking about, when I retire I'm going to do this. And not many players have that in the back of their mind, because it's literally next year, next year, next year, because of the journey in a female game, for example, because as you say, you've been out to different countries, coaches might change, and then they've been forced to transfer, or it hasn't worked out there, or they're trying to get into a higher league to prove themselves for the national team, etc. And it's that constant journey where you might not settle for some players, but it's great that you would then go into a pathway where you could help players with their visibility, try and get abroad, and you can help them. And it's even better that you're trying to help them in an agency capacity where you've been a player yourself, where you can support them, because not every agent has the player's true interests at heart. But in your sense, you would be a fantastic agent because you would have had those experiences and you'd be open and honest with those players. So I think it's incredible that you've already got retirement in the back of your mind, but it's great that you're an advocate in a way that you want to help drive the women's game here and now, but also long term. And I think that's how the female game is going to evolve and grow, is because there's more advocates and more people like yourselves who are pushing for that change, which is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like a lot of people, and myself included, it's easy to get caught up in like, okay, next season I'm going to do this. And then it's important, I think, also my parents would agree, just after studying for 5 years and getting a business degree, they're like, when is that going to get put to use, you know? So I think for me, and yeah, like you said, as like a female footballer too, I guess I'm not naive to the fact that at some point you do have to make a decision, like when you're going to start a family and that type of thing. So that's kind of lingering in the back of my head, I guess, timing wise, but it's not stressing me out too much. Everything happens the way it should and it'll sort itself out. But I think for now, as a player, using my platform in whatever way, whether that be, yeah, like going on podcasts and doing different things in the community to help amplify different programs that I believe in while I'm a player, and then maybe inspiring next generation players. And then once I'm finished, I think just figuring out how to best translate my experiences and skill sets and use them to channel good. So I think, yeah, I'm actually starting a new job soon with like a women's sports media company. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, called The Gist. So I think that for me is sort of like the first step of combining like career aspirations within the world of sports media with my professional playing career, just to sort of supplement, especially during the off season. Like I'll be home for a couple months, but staying involved in that way. And then whether that transitions into maybe that agency idea that I mentioned to you before, I think my head's kind of spinning as I'm exposed to more things overseas. I'm like, that's a really great idea that we don't have at home. How can I work with people to like implement this program or this set of sponsorship, like something so simple that I think could help get a league up and running in Canada. It just needs to be done right. So I think just looking for ways to like collaborate and best use my skill sets is kind of what I'm trying to do, if that makes sense.
No, of course, and that's totally incredible. You know, already, as I said, you're an advocate, but then when you say setting up a league in Canada and using where you get involved in off-season to get involved in women's broadcasting to then, you know, channel the good things and translate those experiences in terms of those aspirations, and then to set up a league in Canada, you know, if a Canadian league was set up and then suddenly a club was there and they went, Christie, we can take you back, come to Canada, it's an amazing opportunity for you, which obviously... you know, whether it's in your head, whether, you know what, I'd love that to happen, or whether it's, as you say, timing, and it's one of those natural things. It's an incredible opportunity and what could work out because of what you're already doing currently in the game and how you're supporting that. And I think, you know, the more players come together and the more that you can utilise your, you know, profile and channel that into creating something better, especially in your home country where it's passionate and you want to come through a system where then you can go into a pro league. It's incredible what you're already doing, and I think, you know, you're so much more than a professional footballer, and how you're balancing that. Even you are using that business degree already because you will be involved in, and suddenly if you found yourself without a club for a year and then you're working on a massive project internationally helping players, I think you could be in a position where you go, do you know what, I don't want to play anymore. I could end up being agency, or I could get into coaching, or I could be a league official. I think there's a route already where I'm thinking from my own business mindset of how this could work out in 3-4 other ways, and that's quite incredible that you're in this situation where you have so much going on, which not only impacts you but impacts everyone else as well. And I just think that's incredible from your own personal perspective, and how lucky the game is to have someone like you.
Oh, thanks. That's really nice of you. I think, like you sort of talked about earlier, like just with regards to like women's wages and everything, I mean, everyone kind of has a backup plan or is thinking of other ways, whether that's to make income or get experience for when you stop, I guess, living the dream or the experience sort of comes to an end. It's kind of good to have like a backup plan, or as my parents would say, many sticks in the fire, just to make sure in case one of those burns out, like all of a sudden this summer, like when I got injured, it was kind of a perspective changer because it's like, oh gosh, like the one thing that I do every single day has come to a halt. And it's like, what if no team wants to sign me? Because at first I didn't know if I needed surgery or not. And then your mind starts going, okay, well, I've only scored X many goals up until this summer transfer window. You're struggling on like maybe a team where it's like we're fighting to not get relegated. So you're like, I haven't really proved that I'm worthy. So it's just like, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get a contract next year. And you kind of just start tunneling down. It's like, that's when I realized I'm like, I need to diversify again, like I did at college and different clubs and jobs and that type of stuff. So I think it's just good to be involved in different things because that way when you are injured, you have an outlet in other ways, like whether that's an online remote job, connecting with people at home and volunteering in the community. Like we've taught like English at some local schools, which I know it's been super fun, and getting to know and understand. Again, we're talking about soccer systems earlier, but just systems of life. Sweden and Canada actually have a lot of similarities, which I've grown to understand more so than the US and Sweden. But it's been cool just to sort of get involved in different ways and diversify, like put your interests, obviously focus on football, but it's also important to have other outlets, I think, just so that you don't burn out, first of all, and second of all, just get over consumed. Because yeah, all of a sudden if something happens and you're injured, or maybe teams in the transfer window just there aren't anyone looking for your specific position or skill set, like things can happen, right? So it's good to have other options.
And that's great because, as you say, you relate that back to your injury, and you went through quite a tough time mentally when you had that injury. And as you say, it can be hard to sort of come back from that, and systems can change. But in that systems of life, to keep yourself busy and to have projects and things that you can focus on and have, evolving conversations about projects and how things can evolve. I think that's truly great, and I think everyone needs that to keep going on in their lives. And it's much more than football because your life evolves around football. We need things to happen in your life around that then, where once that football outlet might not be at the greatest point where you are in that mental state, once it gets into that life circle, what is in that life circle that can help you be happy again and keep you focused?
Yeah, I think what you said about like the life circle and being happy is the most important thing. And I mean, I certainly hit a point this year where I was at the bottom of that sort of circle and had to rebuild it, or just not rebuild it, but reevaluate. Okay, what are the things besides being able to play football that bring me happiness? Because you'll drive yourself crazy if you just focus on the one thing that you can't do. But maybe taking that as a time to like focus on like the mental side of things, or just work on like other hobbies or interests, or just rebuilding those connections with people who maybe have like fizzled out over time just because of time change and working and living abroad. So I think just taking every situation as it comes and focusing on keeping that circle as big and as happy and positive as it can be, because it can be hard living abroad. Like, I mean, it is like for my family at home, 9 hours time difference. So it's like you can live your whole day and maybe get a couple hours before you go to bed at night, but you have to learn to be self-sufficient, and building some of that circle has to be within the new place that you live. And in order to build that circle where you live in an abroad environment, you kind of have to put yourself out there. And some people are more comfortable with that than others. And I think I've grown to become more comfortable with it. But at first, like the first time living away from home, I certainly wasn't very comfortable at first. I think now it's become a bit easier for me. But yeah, I think keeping that circle, like you said, is really, really important.
And it is important, and as you say, that self-efficiency is really important in helping how that circle adapts, and connecting with everything that you need and want in life. And especially as you say, that time difference can have a real impact because it takes you even further away from your family and those connections, because they could be at the end of their day and you're just starting yours, etc., depending on time zones for all players in that situation. And then suddenly, family's gone to bed, but you started your day, then you haven't connected with them, and it can be quite tough because even though you have those flatmates and people that you live with, and teammates who speak English, you can feel isolated away from your family just in the system of life, as you say, because of just the way that the world is spinning and where we're on one side compared to the other.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you said. Like, I think the first half of the year, it was really weird for me, and I would call it kind of like my peaceful time because it's like, or it was sort of a weird. I felt like I was on my own planet until about like 3:30, 4 p.m. in the day, because then, or 3 p.m., because then people on half of Canada start to wake up, and you start to get some messages, and then as you get to like 4, 4:30, 5, 6, you're having dinner, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, everyone's awake. You start getting the trickling messages, but until that point, it's like silent unless you're talking with people within Sweden or Europe. And I think it's funny how like just friends who live in maybe other countries but are over in Europe, even just because we're on the same time zone, it's like you connect with them maybe closer because it's like you can bond with the fact that your whole family's not even awake until you're pretty much eating dinner. So it's like you're either alone or with people around you, or maybe you rebuild those like relationships and connect with people who are on the same time zone as you. So it's a unique but really cool I guess change, and it forces you to be more independent. I think for me, like not relying on like those FaceTimes throughout the whole day. It's like, okay, Christy, you got to get your day started, get up, go to the gym, do something, because what are you going to just wait around all day until people are free to FaceTime? Like it forces you to really maximize your days and focus on yourself and being okay and comfortable, I guess, on your own, which I think for me took a while to get adjusted to, because you're so used to, especially at college. Like I lived at first in a house with 7 girls and 7 of us, all of us were on the soccer team, and I don't know, you have such a tight community, and if people weren't home you could walk over to your neighbor's house and there was just people everywhere all the time free. And all of a sudden when that's taken away from you, you're like, oh, okay, I need to figure out how to be happy on my own and what I can do for myself. And discover things that maybe you really like. Maybe you're a morning person, maybe you're not. I'm not particularly a morning person, especially because if I'm up late talking with family from home, that's usually the best time to chat with people and when they're finished work and everything. So you figure out your own routines and what works best for you. And I guess that's something I've really appreciated, because obviously you have your own team training, but something that's interesting here compared to home is we do gym on our own time. Like lifting, we have a gym pass to one of like our gym sponsors, and we can go whenever. So you can build those workouts in within your training week how you like. So that gives a lot of flexibility within your training program to focus on stuff at the gym that like you really want to focus on and that will help your game, as opposed to doing like, say, at home at school we would do a generic team lift that maybe would focus on some things that you're not really trying to improve on or work on. So a lot of flexibility, but with a lot of time on your hands, it can be trickier sometimes than being really busy, if that makes sense. Like it was the first time, I guess, being here and just focusing on soccer. It's like you don't have school or like other things, competing priorities, volunteering as much, or you know what I'm saying? Having too much free time is sometimes harder to get things done than when you're super busy at school and you just manage to bang out all those assignments and you don't really know how you do it and are half asleep part of the time. But yeah, I guess having a lot of free time has been pretty cool to build your own life in a way.
Absolutely, and it comes down to that sense where you are a young person, that you've had your educational experience, because as we said, there are mature players who are juggling jobs and stuff, and suddenly they're the ones training late at night following work, and they might be a bit sluggish, or there's that variety of things. But for you, where you can have your own timetable where you can juggle those things, and as you say, flexibility to go to the gym or get on with other projects, it suits you quite well, and it can be really beneficial in terms of when you can rock up the training a little bit more refreshed than some of the mature players, and can help really put you in position. And although you are a team and you got this teamship, sometimes looking at yourself and going, do you know what, I'm a bit fortunate to actually be in a position where I'm a little bit more fitter, I'm a little bit more fresh, I've got this energy, can really help you. And sometimes we forget that football is quite an individualistic sport where we have to sort of look out for ourselves at times, and it's not as easy going as some people think or see it is, because there's always this political element from my own experience that happens in the background where people are gearing changes or they're trying to find moves for themselves or things like that. But we have to look after ourselves. But it's great that you have that flexibility and you figure out your your own routine, because that can be really beneficial to you. But sometimes, when you are really busy and you just find yourself naturally doing things because that's the way time has pushed you, it can really help you, because you end up doing more than you have in your free time. And free time doesn't always help you. And I know sometimes when I've got assignments, I'm like, yeah, I've got a month to do it. I've got so much free time, I'll do a bit here, a bit here. It doesn't work for me. Whereas I know if I prepare in my head mentally everything that I need to do, and then the day before I'm like, right, I know what I need to do. It's all in my head. Right. I'm under a time constraint. That suits me better, because I know I'm limited and I have to get it done. So my focus is driven then on my assignment there and then. And that sometimes that can be really beneficial.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I think it was interesting always at college, our coach would say, like, they always track our GPAs and all this stuff, like our grades, and he said that it's the vast majority of our team's GPAs were actually higher in season versus off season, just meaning like when we're traveling a ton and uh, we have 2 games a weekend and we're training 5 or 6 times a week, and then in off season, I mean, we're still training, but we're not traveling and we're not training nearly as much, and practices aren't 4.5 hours including film and everything. It's just like a quick session, and it's just interesting how it's like, okay, theoretically we have more time, we should be doing better, but it's weird how the GPAs just didn't correlate at all. In season, people tend to do better and stronger, and it's just because I think you have to get it done. Like, there's no choice, and there's not that month that you can wait. It's like you have to do it now because you have playoffs in a month, and you're going to be flying across Canada or wherever you're going for nationals or what have you. So I like the time pressure. I think any of my friends at university would say the same. That yeah, that's definitely more where I thrive, when you have time pressure to get assignments and things like that done.
And I know from experience where I currently live, we actually have 2 Canadians who are working here with us. So one has moved over full
Oh,
time,
cool.
just bought a house, and the other one actually came across to study a degree here, done his PGC, and now is studying his masters. So his visa is allowed him to stay. So he's got a full time teaching job at the minute, and he's having a great experience because of that. And we just lost a member of staff because he moved away to Canada with his girlfriend because she was Canadian. So he decided to move away and go to Canada. And one of my best mates, he was on a scholarship at Newport County. It didn't work out, so he went across to Canada, and he had an amazing experience out there. But he's come back now. He's made his decision on football. He's given it all to it, and now it's down to him to focus on his degree, get into teaching, and football sort of done for him. It's more recreational than a career pathway now. But he really, really enjoyed living in Canada, and he said to me, I can't believe these Canadians are moving here to Wales. Why are they not living in Canada? Because I lived in Canada, and it's so much better than Wales.
That's interesting. And then, of course, I moved from Canada to Sweden. I'm like, I don't know why everyone's living at home. Like, why wouldn't we want to move here? I think the grass is always greener. Like, the people in Wales are probably like, wow, this is so cool. Like, so different than Canada. I think this comes down to it's different and it's so interesting. And there's more to learn. Like, even for me being from Vancouver in Canada, which is far, far west coast. And by the end of high school, I'm like, I want to go to school and I'm not going to the States. I'm going to stay within Canada. But I went to like the opposite side of the country because I'm like, it's time to explore. And then once I graduated from there, I'm like, I got to get out of here and go to Europe. I just think it's always cool to, not that Canada isn't great. I love Canada. It's amazing, but it's so much more fun and to explore things that you're not used to. And maybe for your friend, it's just like a lot of that, like things that he wasn't used to. Whereabouts did he live and play in Canada?
I think it was possibly Vancouver. Was it? Is it? I'm not entirely
Yeah,
sure, but
Vancouver.
I know he went across and he said that he had such an incredible time, really enjoyed it. He played with someone who was quite good, and he played for Cardiff City, and he moved to America, so he done it slightly differently. But he come back
Okay.
and they joined the same like grassroots football team. And I know that the other boy from America, he actually blew up in the changing room the other week because he was they sort of have like a list of rules and you have to comply, such as going in the shower, you have to stay for a drink after a game. If you don't, you get a list of fines. And he was like, I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
showering, I'm not staying, I've been here for enough hours, I want to just go home at this point. And they fined him for it, so he blew up. And the interesting contrast was because he's been out to America and he went literally from youth football over then to America, stayed in youth football, trying to progress on that scholarship, and then came back. It was actually the first time in an adult game for him that he's ever experienced. And it was quite interesting, although he was 24, 25, this was the first time experiencing an adult game, and he didn't know how to cope on that transition back, where he's only been back a few months, in terms of being in that environment, that dressing room, and being around what these expectations are. And it was difficult for him to adapt back from being abroad back into here. And I know my friend from Canada, who went out to Canada, had the same sort of experience, and it took him quite a bit of time, but he had been back a few more years by then, so to him he's adjusted back to it. But it was quite interesting to see that contrast between someone who's come back and someone who has been back a bit longer, and it can be quite difficult.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know the next time that I guess I'll play in Canada. Maybe just at home, like to get touches with like different teams in locally. But I think there's always that element of you're not trying to step on anyone's toes. You're just trying to play, and you don't. I think in a perfect world, no one would have any expectations. They would just join a new club and kind of be that new silent player. I think like when, I don't know if you're familiar with like Sam Kerr, but when she joined Chelsea, there's a really cool new documentary that I've just been watching with some teammates, and it talked about for her, obviously it was like the biggest signing in women's football, one of the biggest contracts ever. And so it was all over the media and like right away in the change room. It caused like, before she even arrived, she was just talking about how difficult it was, because it's like she's like one of the best forwards in the world for Australia and for Chelsea, and but it took her a while to like get going and get started, and people were kind of like, we're paying so much money for her, like what's going on, like it's taking forever. But I think she said something along the lines of like, in the men's game you have to play well to belong and to be accepted, but in the women's game you have to belong to play well, because it's like she said at first, like when she didn't feel like she belonged and like necessarily fit in the change room. Not that that's just for the women's game. I think it goes both ways for the men's game, but I think that element, the change room element that you keep circling back to, is like super, super important. And I think it becomes more difficult when there's more elements, like people working jobs versus the internationals who, like you said, just have to focus on playing and have no reason to not be the fittest and strongest there, because that's your sole purpose. So just like balancing those expectations. And I think being respectful of, we have team fines as well. Like if you show up late, don't show up in the right thing, kick the ball over the net at practice, I got an unnecessary yellow card the other game, so it's like you have to pay a bill, and it's a fun way to sort of keep everyone engaged, and it all goes towards a team fund anyway. So yeah, I think those team fines are interesting, but I think it's important to comply with them, because if you don't, then you sort of come across as I'm better than everyone else, or like it sounds like in that story you shared, maybe that's how the team felt when that person didn't want to comply. But it's tough. I think just refitting into your home culture, it'll be interesting. I mean, I haven't really done it yet, so the first time I do, I think it'll be exciting. It's nice to be back with English speakers. Yeah, and just be back with friends and family.
And hopefully that does come back round where you can be with those friends and family and those English speakers in a sense, because as you say, it's belong to play well, and realistically that's where you do belong, because that's where you're from and that's the system that you've come through. And these fine systems are in place for a certain reason, and they're there to help realign the adjustments and expectations when they're not being complied to. But I know when I've been in the change rooms with my teams, and I've seen some of the changing rooms that this player would have been in, there is absolutely no chance I would even shower. I would take the fine week in, week out. I know my team was showering after the game last week in the away changing room, and they come out of the showers, which were okay, they're not the worst showers I've seen, but they came back into the change room and the floor was muddy, so they're in bare feet, they just had a shower, slobbering in all this wet mud which is now all over the floor. I had to get out of the change room and just stand outside. I was like, boys, I'm not even going to put this on our list of fines. I wouldn't even do it myself. So, but I think for him on that flip side, he was like, well, I've played for Cardiff City, I've been at the Wales Youths, I've gone abroad to America, so I've been in professional environments. Now I've come back into a grassroots environment, and you think these expectations are professional? You're all wannabes. You didn't make it, so he blew up in that sense, and I could kind of understand, because he'd come from quite a professional environment, and that's all he's ever been in since he was about 8 years of age up until 25. So for him,
right.
it's taking that toll on him. And even as we say, when it comes back to yourself, tolls can happen because, as we say, when you get a little bit older, as we say, it's all these barriers which can add up, and they can really take a toll on you mentally, physically, where you've had to move, change, etc., and so on. I can completely understand in that sense, but it's been nice that you've had a really good journey so far and that you are enjoying it. And again, it comes back round to that fun element, and that's something that he's had to adjust back to. But I think where you currently are, I think, especially being young, where you've been out to Spain, been out to France, come from Canada, might have the opportunity to go back to Canada, living in Sweden. It's quite an enjoyable experience, realistically, when you come back to the bare bones of it, to have as a young player, before you get into those strides of being a mature player, life, family, kid, etc., where you can take that right with you throughout life, even when you're in your 50s, to go back. You might have a family holiday here in Sweden, and you go, oh, do you know what, I played for this club, and you might be invited back, etc., etc. And it's those long-term connections and those experiences which can set you up for life.
Yeah, I think every sort of team and experience and, like you said, country I've had like the privilege to travel to, whether that be like for France, my main purpose there was to study, and then playing just sort of happened as an exciting side piece. But like having a chance to study and learn different environments there, it's yeah, I've loved it, and it kind of like the travel bug definitely exists. I think being able to play as long as possible and using that as a way to see the world is kind of a dream in itself. And it's, yeah, amazing to just travel around like on weekends off or international breaks. Like when you don't have national team commitments, it's like the days are off because the league is paused. So you can go and travel around to the nearest European city or country. I think in the FIFA break, even though I was on crutches, we went to 4 different countries. So like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. And it was amazing. Like I don't know, everything's so accessible once you're over here. So just making sure to live every day to the max and take advantage of it. And yeah, make sure like when I'm older, like I want to bring like my brothers and my sisters, and my parents both had the chance to come and visit, which I'm super happy about because they could see like why I love, I guess, life here so much. And now when I'm talking about it, they can put a face to the name of like the different places and training ground and that type of thing. But yeah, it kind of just makes you eager for more, and just like, wow, I've been so fortunate to live such an awesome life and travel around so much, and I don't want it to stop anytime soon. So I'll continue doing what I can to keep it going.
And let's hope that it can continue, because even in that sense, it has a wider perspective, because your family can come out, they can have those experiences. You can put a face to a name, as they say, and they can see that for itself and be like, oh, do you know what? We can understand why you enjoy life. Oh, it's great that you have this environment. Or look, you have a nice apartment or nice friends, etc. And they can see why you're putting everything into it and having those experiences, which is great. And I hope that it does continue and it continues to go that way. And I know that you've got other commitments, and I'm conscious at the time. But what was your inspiration into getting into football or soccer then?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I've always played like a variety of sports growing up, soccer being the main focus, but also played hard baseball with boys on a team until I was about 13 or 14 years old. And I actually at one point in time quit my soccer academy, and my dad was, yeah, he thought it was an interesting decision because I wanted to finish out my baseball season with the boys. There was something, I was the only girl on my team, so there's something about proving my coach. Anyways, that was a great experience though, which I think has translated into other skills. So I think growing up, yeah, playing baseball and soccer and field hockey, like growing up, women's sports wasn't really on TV, but my coach, my youth league coach, she was actually a recent like retiree of the national team, and she was of there that played with like Christine Sinclair and Randy Herman. She's like a Hall of Famer in Canada. So I think because she had just retired, and we actually hosted the Women's World Cup in 2015 in Vancouver, Canada. So she brought us to those games, and I remember like she brought us because she had just recently retired down to meet all of her teammates after the game, and they would sign all of our cleats and jerseys, and I felt like the coolest person on earth. And I think even though you couldn't often watch them play on TV, but us being at that World Cup, and like the CONCACAF was often held in Vancouver too, I think being able to see the players and meet some of them, and especially like Christine Sinclair, like a legend, like herself, I think those are the players that sort of, Randy Hermes for me, my coach growing up. Like, I mean, you have like male managers and different coaches, but having a female coach who I'm like, okay, like, you're a girl, you were able to continue on after university, play for the national team. I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to play professional. So I think for me, that was sort of my goal. And at the time, because I didn't see a professional league in Canada, and I didn't necessarily, you couldn't watch it on TV. You still can't watch women's soccer on TV in Canada easily unless you're using certain streams. So I think from a visibility standpoint, like, my coach growing up physically bringing us to games and showing us it's possible, like, you can do it if you just keep working. And she herself didn't necessarily always play on the highest level teams growing up before university. And like, for me too, like, we have in Canada like provinces for our states, and like, never played on my provincial team, never done any national team stuff. So I think I was starting to get nervous, like, maybe I'm not good enough to like make it to university or beyond, because you don't make those like regional teams. But since like she herself like never played for any of those teams, and she still went on to be a Hall of Famer for the national team, I think it just sort of reinstates that, like, if you keep working and putting one foot in front of the other, like, anything's possible. So yeah, I think, long story short, what inspired me to play football and sort of eventually channel my focuses from other sports into soccer would have been like my coach Randy Hermes, and because she introduced me to like Christine Sinclair and like that whole era, Karina LeBlanc, who's now the GM of like Portland Thorns and NWSL, and like that whole era of players. Yeah.
And it's incredible that you had a coach who gave that commitment to you, because you might not be here now unless they were actually taking you to games, or they give you that level of commitment, because as you saw that commitment from then, it's channeled into you and the team. And you might not be there now, but it's incredible that you've been inspired by your coach, and that's where you currently are, and you've been able to take all those experiences from other sports, which has really helped you, and you know, it has shaped your young experiences into your journey so far into currently where you are, and you can continue to shape it. So it's quite an incredible journey that you've had so far, but it's been fantastic that you've had such a great role model and coach who was committed to you to take you to games, because not every child or player will have that opportunity, or a coach who is as committed.
Yeah, you're right. And like, I think more I'm realizing, like, as I get older, and like, I mean, as I continue to experience other coaches, as I continue to progress, who maybe didn't take those extra steps, like, that was a really like big commitment of her to bring us to those games. Like, that's a big ordeal to like organize that. And but the impact that it had, I think, on all of us, like me and my teammates, we were like 12 years old or 11, and I can still vividly remember it, and we still talk about it. So I think just realizing your impact also on girls at that age, because me being like 23 and still having those vivid memories when I'm like 10, 11 years old with this specific team, and going to the Canadian national team games and holding the Canadian flag, walking out for the World Cup, like, having those experiences, I think just realizing how impactful you can be on like the generation when like they're kids that you're like, when I'm thinking of a 10 or 11-year-old, I'm like, oh, I don't know if they'll like remember who I am or what I'm saying. It's like, oh, look, if you're saying things that resonate with them, they absolutely will, because I did. I remember what my coach did. I remember the games we went to, the players we met. So I think just being mindful of your ability to impact people, and just, again, talking about using your platform and doing what you can. And I think like going home for me, another thing I'm excited about is connecting with like some of my youth teams that I played for, both high school and club, and just doing what I can, whether that's coaching or just chatting with players about like their ambitions to play varsity or beyond. And yeah, I think just doing what you can to give back, because you never know like who might listen to you or like then start following you, and yeah, like have those ambitions, or like you might be that person and not even realize it. But I don't know, I'm just like, it's cool when you hear people, and like when I've reached out to my coach since, and be like, I don't know if you've realized how big of an impact you've had on like me playing, but kind of helped me like get through my college career and then go professional after and continue having those aspirations. And she was like, oh my gosh, this message like has made my day, like, she's not realizing at the time. But I'm like, no, you've had a huge impact on my life, and I just want you to know that. And I think for her, it's just like made her feel, I guess, like really good and assured about like everything she did with our team. So yeah, it's cool. I think just using your platform in the best way possible is super important.
And I truly love that, and I love that you've given back to your coach, because from a coaching perspective, you don't always get that feedback, or you don't always have the opportunity to have those conversations, or to have such high praise, because it can be such a difficult world, and you don't always seem to get that from a coaching side, despite giving so much to your players. So when you've given back to that coach and you've seen her smiling and she's taken that away and she's really happy and she sees you playing, and there's so much in that which she's going to really enjoy from a coaching perspective. But it's great that you're not so selfish, but you have given back. You understand that you want to go and inspire players, that you want to leave a legacy, that you're using your platform, using your profile, because these messages are really important, because if your coach didn't do that to you, then you wouldn't be taking that away with you now, and you wouldn't be inspiring the next generation because of that. And it's this real good leadership from your coach which has led this to naturally coming through a progressional pathway, and it's great that you're going to be taking over the reins and be pushing that as an advocate. And you're much more than a player, and you're a natural role model, and a leader within yourself. And I think there's so much that you're going to go on and have, and these players are lucky to have you. So when you go back home, it's going to be great that you can have these conversations.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it's sort of, you talk about like responsibility as players with like platforms or with very small platforms. And again, it's just like you come home and it's like maybe it's just as simple as helping out coach, or maybe they want you to have like a little chat with like their top group or like the graduating group of players, just to encourage them to stay with football, or at kind of that age 14, 15, where girls or boys kind of make that decision. Okay, I'm really going to run with this, or maybe soccer is not for me. I'm going to just focus on school. So I think just figuring out like how you can best serve, and yeah, you kind of have a responsibility as players to help like inspire or just do what you can to support the next generation of players, because that's who's going to be helping your kids, like, when they're playing. And it's important to just, like you were talking about earlier, like the cycle of life, like doing what you can to, I mean, obviously you're talking about there's the individualistic aspect of football where you're like, what's the best for me? Like, what's the next best contract? Like, what league do I want to play in? Like, what area of the world do you want to live in? But I think just like wherever you are, wherever your feet are, like just try and have an impact on the community. And yeah, it'll help you get better in touch with like the people around you. And I think like one of my favorite experiences has been like working with like the English classes, like grade 4, 5s, and 6. And at first I was thinking, I'm like, these kids are so little, but they're right at that age that we were just talking about, like 10, 11, 12, where it's like maybe maybe they will like remember like the two Americans who came in and want to do an exchange in the US or something, because like one of my roommates talked about how she lives in San Francisco and showed the bridge and they thought it was so cool. Like you never know how your actions can impact, but it can bring you closer to like communities. And I think like visiting that school definitely helped me feel more a part of like the community that I was living in. So yeah, it's important to just sort of get involved as best you can wherever you are.
And it comes back to that point of belonging, and I think you've naturally done that. And
Yeah.
it's great that kids are, have been inspired by that bridge, that San Francisco one. I know that is something that I'd love to go and see, and America is such an amazing contrast. I know my best friend who lived in Wales, he's Filipino, so moved from Philippines when he was young over to here, and now he's moved out to America. So he's had quite a great journey, but his parents are both nurses. He lives in California. He's playing basketball on like Palm Beach, and I'm like, oh, we got a football court on a park, which is just a bit of grass. But he sends me pictures, and it just inspires me to go out there and coach with him. He's like, you need to come out here, you need to do this. And I always think of him whenever I'm speaking to someone from Canada and America, and thinking of the experiences of going out there and enjoying that. But he's really enjoyed it, and I know that I try to relate to him in terms of what he's seeing and how I would like to get out there at some point. So I can understand it when you're speaking to those kids and you're inspiring them in terms of how he inspires me, and I try to relate to that from everything that the interviewees say. But there's so much which you've gone on and you've done already within your career, and I think it's amazing what you're already thinking of and are doing, and that you have a long-term goal and plan, and you have lots of other things going on, which is really important. And as you talk about, it's that mental state which is an important aspect to really consider, manage, and keep on top of. And you seem to be doing it really, really well. And I think naturally you are going to become a role model, even bigger on a bigger platform and stage. And I wish you the best of luck. And I know all these young players will be looking up to you. But in the hour that we've been speaking, I've taken so much away, so many little notes, things that I'm going to pull off and have as little takeaways from this. But I wish you the best of luck out in Sweden. I'll obviously be rooting for you. I'll try and keep on top of your socials. But anytime you have great news, it'd be great to see. But honestly, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm so grateful that you've came on and that we could make this happen. And I wish you the best of luck with the rest of your day and your other commitments. But it's been incredible to meet you, and I think you're an amazing individual as well as player. And I know that I've really enjoyed this hour, and it's been a great hour to really have with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always amazing to meet people from around the world, and it's I don't know if I've met someone from Wales before, so that's a first, and
I'll
it's
take
been
that.
awesome chatting with you. Yeah, and yeah, thank you for sharing your experiences and bouncing ideas. If you ever need anything, yeah, I'll be in touch. I'm just one message away, so I'll keep you posted of where I go next, whether that's back to Sweden or where. That's kind of the fun part of football, is just trusting the process and that everything will work out how it should. And I don't necessarily know where my next contract will end me, but hopefully somewhere fun. I'll keep you posted.
Absolutely, and as much as it is scary, it is actually really exciting when you say it in that way in terms of where it's going to take you next. But I hope it works out in the exciting pathway, and everything happens for the right reasons at the right time, as you said earlier on. But yeah, just drop me a message. But other than that, I'm really appreciative, and I wish you the best of luck for everything else to come. And I hope you enjoy your last game tomorrow, and I hope you come away with a win.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, take care.
Yeah, and you. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.